listeners, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. I'm so glad you can join us today, and I hope you're all doing fantabulous. That's fantastic and fabulous. Put together, twice as good as just fabulous, or just as good, twice as good as fantastic. Before I introduce my guest today, I just wanted to make a correction to an error I made on episode 18 with Keith Johnson. I had mentioned that Catherine Crosby's daughter starred in the made-for-TV movie Wonder Woman from 1974. It seems that Kathy Lee Crosby, the star of the movie, was no relation to Catherine and Bing Crosby at all. Silly me. Mary Crosby, the actress who shot JR in the TV series Dallas, however, was her daughter, like Keith had mentioned. So it's my bad, so I slap myself. Bad Philip. Okay, so my special guest today is peace activist, blogger, campaign strategist, and author of Practical Political Campaigns for Progressive Candidates, Grace Kelly. Welcome, Miss Grace Kelly, to the Downright Upright Show. May I call you by your nickname, Kelly?
Oh, please do call me Kelly.
Okay, I will. Before we begin delving into your amazing career, can you tell our listeners where you were born, where you were raised, where you went to school, and et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I was born in Wisconsin, but I had the wisdom to go to other places. And I traveled across the United States, and I kept coming back to Minnesota. And Minnesota is my heart and my home.
Me too. It's my heart and my home. I was born in New York, but I should have lived here my whole life. I love it. I love the people. I love the Four Seasons. I love everything about it. How did you enter into the realm of campaign strategizing? Was there a particular person or event that inspired you?
I became involved in campaign politics because I saw the environmental crisis coming. I saw that we were getting into wars and being distracted from taking care of our own people in our own place. Mm-hmm. And I was in corporate. I was a corporate project manager. And my heart just did not feel like it was in the right place. And I was, I guess, lucky enough to get to get a buyout. And I took that money and I said, what's the best thing I can do with my life? And I said, we need to change some decisions we're making. And I've always been an analyst. So I started thinking about how to do things and what types of strategies work the best. And through a friend of mine, I ended up writing about it. I ended up on the DFL executive committee traveling throughout the state. And I was so lucky because so many campaigns, I would say, I want to try out this idea. I want to see it works over in Eagan. Does it work in your neck of the woods? And they would say, sure. And I would try it and I would write about it. And I found that there are some things that are universal and some things you have to adapt according to where they are, and some things you should never do, like outside of the urban area. There's a lot of different nuances, and sometimes the difference between a successful strategy is just knowing a few details of how to do it well. And so I have been trying to get that information out and teach people about it. And I started by blogging, and then my friend put together my blog articles because he said I got tired of trying to find them online, and he put them together in a book. And that's how we got to the book. And of course, throughout this time, I've been working on various campaigns. And the last campaign, I was lucky to manage Senator Sandy Pappas's campaign. She's awesome candidate.
What district is she in? Sandy?
Senate District 65, St. Paul.
Okay.
Now, of course, I'm not biased, but St. Paul is the best.
Okay.
Everybody has to say that about their home.
Well, where I live is a suburb of St. Paul. So are we still considered buddies?
Yes, well, you live in Eagan, and I work for the Jim Carlson campaign twice. And I have door-knocked more doors in Eagan than I ever did in St. Paul.
Okay.
Because it mattered, and Eagan folks are just wonderful, too.
Thank you. I know.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I want to go off on a little bit of a tangerine here, if you don't mind. Why did you pick blogging instead of running yourself for an office? Are you not the type to be in politics yourself, or what stopped you from doing that?
Well, there are great people who love to be in front of the room and love to lead. I love to figure out how best to do things. That's my specialty.
Okay.
And I can lead from the front of the room, but it's very tiring for me because I'm an introvert. And I figured out that if I got 20 great people elected, that was more than one candidate, Grace Kelly. Mm-hmm. And I could really make an impact in my life by getting, great people out there. So I think I'm a great second in command. I'm a great manager strategist. But, the people who speak in front of the room, I love those people. I need those people. And good for them. We all want people who can do that.
Yeah. And you mentioned Jim Carlson. I mean, his campaign was great. I mean, you helped him so immensely, and I'm sure he's very grateful to you.
We had the greatest team. We put together a team that was just awesome. It wasn't just me. There were some great thinkers on there. But one of the things, for example, we did is Eagan hadn't been worked. It had been plenty place. And we started doing every door. We started early. We worked through so much of Eagan, you wouldn't believe it. And people noticed. And it was a thing that when we started talking and we started working at it, that real conversations change the way politics work. And in fact, I believe that real conversations are the only things that really change people's minds permanently. Mm-hmm. Media is kind of like a flavor of the moment. Mm-hmm. And so it's these, and in many ways, I think what you're doing here is also more of a real conversation than most media.
Mm-hmm. I thank you. And the fact that I do a podcast, that's what you do, and I do the podcast. That's what happens when you become a senior citizen, No, just kidding. The reason I do this podcast is because there are so many amazing Minnesotans out there with so many amazing ideas, and I just wanted to share the sound. Minnesota has a sound, if you know what I'm saying. It has an aura. We're different. You don't hear, I don't like African Americans, or I don't like this person. This doesn't really go on very often in Minnesota. It's not like other states where there's a lot of segmentation, and everybody's in their own corners. Minnesotans tend to be very cohesive, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure there's people that aren't, of course, but
we care about each other. I think it's the snow. See, we have to take care of each other because we have horrible weather that really impacts everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we didn't take care of each other, well, this would not be such a nice place to live.
I know. And my neighbor went away on vacation, and remember a couple of months ago it snowed really pretty badly. I took out my snowblower and did my driveway and his driveway. So when he came back, he was, oh, thank you.
How Minnesotan of you.
Yeah, and he does the same for me when I'm not here. So we one hand washes the other, and I love that about this place. And people are so polite. Don't you notice, in Minnesota? Because you've lived elsewhere, and mm-hmm. I love it. I just love it. Anyway, I'm a fan. Your book, let's talk about your book. How's that? You want to do
okay.
that? Your book is not actually a campaign manual, but a series of campaign blog articles. How can a person use something like that?
Well, imagine that you're sitting there at midnight, mm-hmm. and you're thinking about, well, what phrase, what would I do? How do I want to spend this money? And, calling someone for a consult at midnight would be very expensive.
No.
If you could even get them on there.
Right.
But you can pull up my book, You could get it online for $10 and you can surf through it. You can look for keywords. And then when you find the article that talks about what you should be deciding maybe for, what kind of things, and then it gives you some ideas.
Right.
And so you can get a lot of information and here. So it's like having an experienced consultant at your fingertips, and all you have to do is word search. Mm-hmm. And then when you find that article, read it. Mm-hmm. One article, and well, according to Ivor, who used my articles, which is why he became my co-author, he says, one of your articles is just worth everything, Kelly. I wanted it to have right at my fingertips anytime I had to make a decision, but I didn't want to read a whole campaign manual. Nobody does these days. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And not only that, every campaign's different. Mm-hmm. You have to adapt. You have to think about it. So what you need to know is help me frame this decision. Help me have some ideas. Help me work this through, do I want to do signs, and how many signs should I do, and when should I put them up? Well, I have a fantastic sign article in the blog thing, and you can go from 0 to 60 just by reading one article.
Mm-hmm. And do the issues, like when you go door knocking, when you put together this book, and you go door knocking, do the issues come up in, obviously they do it on occasion, but are they the main thing that you get to, kind of convince that person to vote for your candidate? Or are there other, or do you zone in on a specific issue, or what's your methodology about that?
So that's kind of the misnomer that people think is that people vote on issues. And
really,
they really have more of an emotional connection to things and people. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when somebody comes to your door, mm-hmm. they essentially said, "I care about you as a person. I want to talk to you personally." Just the fact that they're there is a connection to you in an important way. Mm-hmm. And if they smile at you and they greet you and you have a wonderful 20 seconds, even if you say, "I'm so busy I can't talk to you," you'll still think, that candidate sent somebody to my door, to me. Mm-hmm. They didn't treat me like I was an automatic, vote for them. Mm-hmm. They cared about me. Right. And it starts with that emotional connection. So the more that you have that connection, you start with a connection with people, you go to a connection on values, and then you go to a connection on issues. Issues is really the last thing. That sounds strange, but that's true.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I would have thought it was the opposite way around. I thought maybe you bring up an issue, and is this important to you? And they'll say yes, and then that's how you hook them in, kind of. But you're doing it the other way around. You're going on a personal level with them, and
Correct.
Then after that,
yes.
you delve into the issues themselves. Am I right?
Yes.
That's amazing. See,
so if the first message to you is, "I care about you,"
yeah.
I mean, doesn't that make a difference, even if we disagree?
Oh yeah. I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's why you're here, Kelly. I mean, I find this is a very fascinating thing, because again, I've always volunteered and done stuff, but I never, I should read your manual, and maybe next time I door knock, I'll do some of your little tricks.
There is a very good article in this collection about door knocking and about getting the right attitude. And I even talk about, so everyone's afraid that someone's going to be mean to them at their door.
That's the big one, yeah.
That's the big thing. I think that that's the last thing you should fear. First of all, if you think about it and you're ready for it, it's kind of fun. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody get ferociously mad, but they're not going to hurt you. I mean,
Well, they usually, give you a zinger and they close the door,
Right. and you think, well, I made their day.
Yeah.
But statistically, and I do every door knocking all the time, there are very, very few of them. And as soon as I had that one, I go, well, statistically, this means I'm going to have a rest of the great day, and this next door is going to be fabulous. And I go with that attitude. And sometimes I'm even been able to charge the grumpy ones. I love charming the grumpy ones. They're the best. I mean, you feel like you've really scored when you've got one of them, you know?
Do you bat your eyelids or something? What do you do? How do you charm?
Well, if somebody comes up to you and goes, oh, I don't want to talk to you. You're just a Democrat. And I go, well, I want to talk to you. Are you just a Republican? Because we could have an interesting conversation. And they look shocked.
Wow.
And sometimes they take me on.
Wow.
And one time in Eagan, there was a series of Republicans that had that knew where I was coming around their area. So they called each other up, and they saw the path I was going, and they all mugged me at one house, and I took on like 2 or 3 of them at a time. And it was one of the most delightful conversations of our lives.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I got their votes for Jim Carlson.
No way.
Well, because they were looking for certain things. They were looking for somebody who would make transportation better, okay? And they were looking for someone who'd get into the details. And they admit that somebody who could make roads work in Eagan were a kind of a big thing. So I kind of won on that. They admitted that they would rather have, you know, if you were going to get treated for a medical thing, you would want to have a doctor as opposed to a non-doctor. Well, if you wanted to have somebody, you know, designing things in the Senate, you would rather have an engineer than a non-engineer. And Jim's an engineer.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And, well, you begin to, without repeating the whole conversation, you begin to see that I made a few points. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, they're never going to tell me they're going to vote for Jim Carlson. But what they did say is, I made some good points, which to me, that's everything.
But you opened the door. Yeah.
I opened the door.
And opened the door to them possibly even considering to cross-vote, you know.
But the other thing, too, is that I treated them with, you know, respect. Right. You know, I tried to speak to them from where I was and not change where I was and speak to where they were. And they could feel that. They like that. The number one thing that persuades Republicans when I'm working door to door is respect. Because they don't expect it from a Democrat at the door.
You never get. You're never supposed to get angry or nasty with someone because you get more bees with honey than with vinegar, right?
You're not only supposed to be not nasty. You're supposed to think, this is a wonderful person in front of me, and if I can speak the right kind of words to him or her, that I might be able to persuade them, or at least get them to question it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Because it takes a lot of time to persuade.
Makes a lot of sense. And what I was going to ask you was, what if you, like, you're door knocking, and I find this fascinating, by the way. I just do, because I do this. I do door knock, and I'm definitely picking up your manual. I definitely am. If you see a Republican yard sign, would you still knock on that door, or would you bypass it?
If it was a Republican, well, it depends upon my mood.
That's a good answer. Okay.
And in timing and stuff like that, because you know, if it's close to the end and I'm running out of energy, then I won't. If I know the person, I will. And if it's a Republican sign for not my candidate, then definitely yes. If it's a Republican sign for opposing my candidate, I might or might not. It depends on how I feel. But yeah, you know, sometimes I'll go up to the door and say, you know, I see you have a sign for, you know, blah, 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 blah. Could you tell me why you have that sign? And they'll say something, well, like, yeah, my husband's really into this person, etc. Well, that's a lead-in because maybe the person in front of me is not. And I sat there and said, well, you know, I understand he's got some good qualities, but I think, like, for example, I might say Jim Carlson's got some really great qualities and he might be a better person to vote for. Have you considered that, you know? And it turns out that frequently in marriages there's a split on the vote.
Oh, yeah.
And I might be talking to the very person I needed to persuade. And she was leaning that way anyway. This happens so frequently.
It does, yeah. It's funny you bringing this up because it happened to me, and so they give you like the list of DFL people and to knock, make sure they get out the vote, and the husband on one door had answered. It was supposed to be this woman, and it ended up being the man. It was her husband, and he's like, "No. I'm a Republican. There's no way." I'm like, why are you voting for such and such a person? Can you just explain? Maybe I can, maybe you can convince me, I love it. And then they explain it, and then you start to talk about your candidate and why that candidate is going to be a better choice. And I think I saw like a little light bulb light up on his head. I did. I don't know what he did. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to know that. But I found that fascinating that I was able to at least let him listen to me,
You did so many things right. The first thing you did is you asked him to talk, and you listened to him. Mm-hmm. If you can get 2 minutes into a conversation, you have really good odds in having a real conversation and having a chance to persuade. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you got 2 minutes. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I did, actually. Mm-hmm.
And when he's telling you about this other candidates, what you learned was what he valued. Okay?
Correct.
So let's say he valued that Republican candidate because he always kept his word. Well, Jim Carlson's one of these people who's, really keeps his word. He's very good at that. Maybe he valued that candidate because he was careful with money. Well, I have a list of 10 ways that Jim Carlson's proven he's really good with money. So having a smart engineer means you make better decisions. And like, for example, one of the things that they've been doing better with Democrats is they build roads in such a way that they're more durable. So over time, you spend less money maintaining the roads, and you have better roads. And this is a short broadcast, don't get into the details, but that's a very provable thing. Mm-hmm. And if that's what the person cared about, you've got a hook.
Yeah. Can I segue into yard signs a little bit now? Because
Sure.
we were talking about them, and I have a kind of a question that I want to pick your brain about. I always see yard signs on lawns in front of people's houses. How do yard signs, do they help the campaign? Can you explain to the listeners what they do?
Well, first of all, the first thing I want to say is yard signs vote. I want to say that because there's a saying that yard signs don't vote. Well, if you were to count votes, yard signs vote because not only when you get a yard sign do you usually have the person who's in the house voting, but their neighbors see it every day. And if it's a neighbor you think about and you talk to and they say good things, then neighbor-to-neighbor persuasion is one of the most effective tools you could possibly have. If you're driving around and you go to this little nook of the woods, like, your street, you wouldn't normally be traveling through this, and you see like 3 yard signs, they go, whoa, I mean, because it says that we didn't put up a yard sign because this is a good place to put up a yard sign. We're putting up a yard sign because we care about this candidate. Mm-hmm. And it's just that little testimonial. And if you see them scattered all over the place, it's the constant reminder. I think it's one of the most persuasive, effective things we have because normal media, normal billboards are so excessively expensive. Mm-hmm. This is one of the few ways that campaigns with very little money can have a huge impact because it's done through people power and it's not done through money power. And Democrats have to do things through people power.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I agree with that. But on the opposite side of the coin, though, I've heard some of my neighbors tell me that they don't put yard signs out because they don't want to offend any of their neighbors. Now, what do you think about that one? Have you ever heard that, or am I the only one?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I believe in diversity, and I believe in diversity of beliefs.
Oh, absolutely.
And so to me, I would say to that neighbor, I'm very proud of what I believe in. And if you believe differently, it's okay for you to put out your yard sign too. Mm-hmm. And this is how, through diversity and discussion and looking at different things, this is how we get to a better place. Mm-hmm. So I strongly believe in what I'm doing, and I urge you to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think I said words to that effect, but she was kind of like not having it. I don't know why, but...
So there's this thing in politics where they try and make politics like not a thing to do, like it's slimy or something. It's exactly the opposite. If you are saying that we can't talk about politics, it's like saying we can't care about our people in our community. And I take it the opposite way. And so, if she wants that, that's fine. But, sometimes we have to let our neighbors be offended. Yeah. I mean, we have to live our lives bravely. Sometimes speaking out is the best thing you can do. And having a yard sign is the easiest way of speaking out.
Yes. And like you said before, yard signs do vote. And sometimes Republicans will cross-vote, you said.
Oh, yes.
You have mentioned that to me. And I think, because I gave you my example, but again, I can't prove that he did vote for the candidate I was knocking for, but I saw a light bulb go off over his head. And so talk about cross-voting a little bit, like if you can.
Well,
briefly.
The first thing I want to say is that we know that there's a lot of cross-voting in Minnesota. It's very much a thing. And you can tell by looking at the difference between like an Amy Klobuchar vote and the lowest vote getter on the Democratic ticket. It can be as much as 20 or 30%. That gives you the range. But that doesn't tell you the whole story. So you know that we've had a lot of vote counting, and we every year we have some auditing. We redo some votes, okay? Mm-hmm. So I have this hobby of going to those things. And one of the things I do for at least a couple hours is I go to watch a table, and I will watch where, like, for example, the top gubernatorial candidate is the one is Republican or Democrat. And then when they're being sorted that way, I will look down ballot, and I will see how much they cross-voted, and I'll pick one particular candidate. Mm-hmm. And the cross-voting on my sheriff candidate was 20%, both ways. Mm-hmm. No, I think actually we had a little bit of advantage on the Democratic side. But the thing that's being hidden is Democrats will vote for Republicans as well as Republicans. So the range that I described is actually a bigger range. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that we keep our own Democratic candidates all the way down the ballot and persuade them for everyone. But we also have to know that Republicans cross-vote all the time.
Yes, they do.
And the ones that are noted as strong Republicans, basically what they are is vocal Republicans. They will talk to you. They will express how they feel. But they're the ones that you can target because they're telling you what they care about. And if they decide to vote for you, they're not going to say, I'm voting for a Democratic candidate. What they'll say is, maybe you have a point. And that's the only clue you have that maybe they'll cross-vote. But they'll always do it quietly.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But there's a huge crossover vote. Yeah. And if you're not going after that crossover vote, you're losing races. Uh-huh. I mean, that's just all there is to it.
Yeah, look at Georgia. I mean, like with the Kemp versus what's his name, Herschel Walker vote. Kemp got like 60-something%. I don't remember. He won by a large margin, whereas Walker in the same party. So people were cross-voting.
Correct.
Because he didn't win. I mean, Senator Warnock won that election against Herschel Walker. So you're proving your point. You know, it's happening more, and I think it's going to happen even more now, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I think the problem that Democrats have been having is you persuade differently when you have a Republican. You know, when Republicans at the door, they do have different values.
Yes.
You know, so I do talk more about fiscal responsibility and spending money wisely, and I speak their talk, and they'll give you clues along the way. They'll give you little words that'll sort of give you an idea of why they're Republican, and I find that if I can make a pretty good case, I can't prove that person cross-voted, but I suspect they do. And my voting averages and my observations at voting audits says there's cross-voting.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I think it's becoming much more a thing because, like I said, I mentioned Georgia. Amy Klobuchar is winning by large margins, but Tina Smith eked out her win, right? So somebody was cross-voting for Amy Klobuchar, but not for Tina Smith, even though she did win, Tina Smith, but not by as much of a margin. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yep. So I guess what we're saying is that you should try and persuade everyone. There's different persuasions for different groups. That's why when we don't know enough about the people to just target all the time. In fact, as much as possible, at least once, you ought to go through every Senate district, do every door, you know, and just see what you get. And I think the investment in that is huge. It takes me about the same time to do every door as it does to try and navigate just a few doors and figure out who's who and skip a door and everything, because I'm fast. If I just keep walking and knocking, I can do a lot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I, you know, like when I do it, I always go with somebody that's much more adept at it, and they go, okay, no, let's not do this. Let's do this. This door is not listed here. Let's go. So we skipped quite a few doors, and I'm wondering if that's a mistake or what, you know.
So most of the time, if you look at the evidence, we only know information like about 10% of the voters that we know really well, and the rest is all a mystery. So I'm walking up to a door, and there's toys all over the place, little sayings on signs and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, oh, okay, this feels kind of democratic to me. And I go to the door and I talk to them about better education. And it usually works. And I come to the next door, and like every plant is lined up in a row and it has rocks around it. And it's, you know, very very ordered. And I go, okay, this feels like a Republican. I go to that door and I lead with fiscal responsibility. Uh-huh. You know, we do money better. We invest your tax dollars in the best way it could possibly be done. And most of the time I'm right.
Yeah, well, you are, because if you look historically, when Democrats are in control, the economy is always better. I mean, right after FDR, during Truman and into Eisenhower, we had the best middle class in the world. We were the envy of the world because we had a higher tax bracket for corporations and for rich people, and that money was coming, down up rather than down. What am I saying? Yeah, down up rather than up down. That it is today. Today, you know, Trump cut taxes so deeply in the last when he was in power that we have no revenue. Right now, we're having budget crises one after the other. We can't even raise a debt ceiling. It's just a mess, right?
I like to use examples for transportation because everybody has to basically get somewhere.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But if you have a car and it's leaking oil just a little bit, and you regularly keep the oil up, it will run probably forever. Mm-hmm. But if you try and skip maintenance, try not to do maintenance for a year or two, you know that engine's going to burn out because it's going to run out of oil.
Right.
That's what the Republicans do all the time. They wait way too long to fix or repair things. Mm-hmm. Things that would be a little fix and not too expensive early on. And that's true in everything. In education, you can get a preschooler that's having difficulty communicating, and you fix how they're communicating. They do better the rest of their career. Mm-hmm. You know, a little fix early on works in education. It works on roads. Mm-hmm. It works on cars. Mm-hmm. It works in, when you're looking at planning a city. If you put a little bit more attention ahead of time, then you don't have to rebuild, and it's expensive later on.
Yes.
Everything in government in our lives.
You get what you pay for. It's that old expression, right?
But not what you pay for. What you think ahead and plan well.
Right.
What Democrats do gets you a better value.
Yes, but I meant to say basically that revenue, when you tax the people that should be taxed, that revenue can go a long way. I mean, you can like what just happened with the infrastructure bill. How many jobs are being created? We're going to have beautiful roads now and bridges and airports and et cetera. And people are going to say, wow, look what Democrats did.
This is becoming the state to have a business in because of the way we handle our roads and bridges and infrastructure.
Yes.
Because if you locate in Minnesota, yes, our weather is bad, but we handle it. If you locate in one of the southern states, then the time that the weather goes bad, which is frequently, all of a sudden you're out of business for a week or two. Which state would you want to live on? The reliable state or the unreliable state?
Absolutely. Good point, Kelly. Really. If you were to advise a candidate, Kelly, of things to do or not to do, what are a couple of suggestions you have for the campaign to give them a better chance of success? For example, we were talking about Jim Carlson and Matt Bostrom and all those people that you helped. Can you tell the listeners your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, if you're ever considering to be a candidate, I would start thinking and doing things a year or two out. And you don't have to commit, but you can look at your resume. You can look at what's put out on Google on you, what people say, and you can start thinking about what's the public perception of me, and you can change that, or you can change the story. Like if you had a drunken episode, you have to think about saying how that changed your life or your driving and how you learned from that. Mm-hmm. Then it becomes a powerful story. Nobody goes through life without ever having anything bad happen to them. I mean, I don't know anybody who claims they had a perfect life, Mm-hmm. And everybody learns from things. And it's learning stories that cover kind of the fudgy kind of, stuff like that. You have to get to know the 1,000 best people in your neck of the woods. And you can get to know 1,000 people. And if you do, then you have connections and things like that. You have to think about, how you look, how you present yourself. You have to get used to being in public. And a provocative person is good for blogging, but it's not good for a candidate. And so you have to think about, when do I do this and when do I not do this? Mm-hmm. And then I would start, So those are the things that help. And of course, like reading a certain book might help, because giving you a picture of what to do. If you're thinking of becoming a candidate, find a campaign that looks like it's doing well and volunteer and see what they do well and see what you think about it. Because you have to know that experience. And in the year that you're going to become a candidate, I would suggest getting somebody to clean your house. That sounds like a little thing.
Okay.
But I can't tell you the number of times that my candidates said they weren't available because they had to clean.
Wow, I never thought of it.
And I'm like, for that 1 year, indulge in a cleaning service and get some things done for you,
Yeah.
And if you have kids, which is wonderful, see if grandmom will take them a couple weekends,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
If you get the grandmom service and you get the cleaning service, then suddenly your life is easier. A candidate has to be ready to take care of themselves and to think ahead. And if they have a good plan, they are so much better and more into things. Wow. And that's the kinds of things. But there's a couple articles that answer the exact question in the book. Okay, so I don't need to natter on here.
So hint, listeners. The book is available. The last question before the shift and you know what the shift is. It's when we shift the questioning around. Can you explain to our listeners how the co-author of your book, Ivor, was it pronounced? Ivor, I keep saying that. Ivor Matz went out of his way to make sure that if a Republican were to read the book, it would be of no help to them. I found this fascinating. Can you explain that?
Well, Ivor has a wonderfully saucy way of speaking, and it's somewhat provocative, and Republicans generally can't handle it. So what Ivor did is he took all my articles and he added a bunch of his articles where he's opinionating, and he alternated them in such a way that if the Republicans tried to read the book, they would throw it against the wall in utter disgust whenever they got to an Ivor section.
Was it because it's like he has he talks derogatorily about Republicans, or what would you say?
Let's just put it this way: Republicans, like George Santos, are just sometimes easy to poke fun at.
Is that his name though, Anthony? Isn't it Anthony DeVolder or some other crazy names? I don't know.
Wasn't it Abraham Lincoln?
You know what? George Santos is looking to be on my show. Did you know that?
I am not surprised. Of course he'd want to be on this show. He is, he of course, and I can't wait to see what or actually hear what he's going to say.
Yeah, well, he said he's going to show up in drag as Katara Ravash.
Oh, my.
No, just kidding.
Well, you're going to have to you're going to have to take a picture,
Yes. Well, I don't have any video yet on this podcast. Maybe in the future, when I get more of a following or whatever, I could do some videos and put them on YouTube or something. That'd be fun.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Anyway, now we have come to the part of the show I like to call the shift, where I shift the questioning away from your career and to your opinions on current affairs. Is that okay with you? Are you ready for that?
Let's do the shift.
Let's do the shift. And it's with an F. Make sure you say shift.
Shift.
Yeah. Because
okay.
Otherwise it becomes a problem with some of our listeners. Anyway, as of the taping of this show, we know that a drip of classified documents has been found at the Penn Biden Center and at President Biden's house, and also at former Vice President Pence's house. Okay? Why do you think there is a media frenzy about this when the former president had a myriad more documents with top-secret classifications in his possession, and in addition, he ignored all the requests for these documents? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, when Democrats do something wrong, that's outrageous. But but when Republicans do something wrong, that's forgivable. That's just human nature.
Uh-huh.
You got to start with that lens, and then it all becomes clear.
Right.
A Republican turns just the wrong signal. Well, that's a major crime.
Uh-huh.
But if a Republican does something, you just shrug it away. We know this, and that's the way it is. There's a problem with classification, though. We've overclassified a lot of things. So basically, people at high levels have to read a lot of classified documents. Mm-hmm. But I would contend that there's a difference between finding a document in a locked cabinet that's been safe forever versus something that's stuck in a moving box that's been moved for several places and nobody was paying attention to it and it was not under lock and key.
And there's testimony that some of those documents were actually either burned in a fireplace or flushed down the toilet. Did you hear that one?
Well, I guess that's one way of keeping it secret.
There must be something he doesn't want to get out. You know.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
But again, like you said, if it was when President Biden's documents were found, did you notice how it was on a loop on the right wing media? How he was just so irresponsible, and so this, that, and the other thing. But there, Voldemort was fine when he did it, and so.
Well, Trump did say that he could shoot someone,
On Fifth Avenue, yeah.
In the middle of a big city, and people, and he could get away with it. And I think that's been demonstrated. Yeah. I think that is true statement. Absolutely. He was absolutely right.
And but the thing with Pence's documents, and this is just me, you got to remember there was an insurrection on January 6th, and he probably he was in such disarray, and his handlers were probably just trying to get everything out of there, and so that's an excuse for him. The same thing with Biden, because when Trump was coming in, he wanted all of Obama's stuff out. Goodbye, get out, and maybe Biden's handlers were also rummaging through papers and trying to get everything out, and some classified documents got stuck in there. So the difference, though, this is what I'm trying to tell the listeners, and I repeat this a million times. With Mike Pence and President Biden, they are cooperating. They're saying, come over to my house, take whatever you want. I don't care. I'm all in, Whereas Correct. Voldemort is not doing that. He's saying, oh, those are actually mine. He could literally think that they're his, and they become his, So it's a very different, ball of wax, don't you think?
Yeah, cooperation is very different than the defiance.
Yeah, I agree. Also, as of today's taping, there were at least, and now I don't even know how many since that, but at least 36 mass shootings in the country. And it's just the end of January. Think about that. Another 11 people were killed and 10 more wounded on January 22nd in Monterey Park in California, and 7 more in Half Moon Bay in California. And these were back-to-back, by the way. What are we as a nation doing wrong? What are we doing wrong? The other nations have guns. They have mental illness in their countries, and et cetera. But why is it the United States that we are daily hearing people getting mowed down by guns?
So this is a thing where it started, and the first person who did it was outrageous. But then it became an idea that kind of seductive, that somebody say, oh, I'm having a horrible time in my life. Maybe I could go out with a bang. And that's our problem. I think we need culturally to set up a way for people to express that they are truly frustrated and they are truly angry in a way that doesn't involve guns. And unfortunately, all of our media, our stories, everything, in every movie that has an action sequence, what do people do when they have to express frustration? Well, in the movies, they use violence. They pull out a gun. So in a way, it's our own fault for modeling what we don't want. And when have you seen a movie where they had long, peaceful negotiation that went on for days and then they resolved something? I mean, is there a movie like that? I can't even think of.
No, not at all. No.
And I must admit, I'm part of the problem too, because I just watched the Mission Impossible movie last night.
Oh yeah.
Talk about solving things by violence. That's really bad.
Yeah.
But we have to think about, can we resolve things? I mean, when do you hear about two people who are really at odds with each other getting together and having a 3-hour discussion over coffee?
Yeah.
I mean, do you even hear those stories?
But see, I hate to interrupt you, but this is what I feel. If you're in a parking lot I use this example all the time. If you're in a parking lot and somebody pulls in front of you and takes your spot, let's just say, and you're angry, if there's no gun in your possession or the other person's possession, the worst that's going to happen, when I say the worst thing could be you'll come to blows. Nobody's going to die, okay? Or the best thing could be just I'll call you the F-bomb a few times, and you'll call me the S-bomb a few times, whatever. But when you have a gun with you, like most Americans, well, I shouldn't say most, a lot of Americans do, it becomes a tool of intimidation. It becomes a tool.
So correct.
It becomes a tool that says, you know what? He thinks he's going to get the better of me today, and you whip out that AR-15 and you just blow him out, and it gives you the satisfaction. Meantime, you just killed somebody, So I think the availability in our country is ridiculous. I heard it's easier to get a gun in some states than to buy Sudafed.
Yes, you are so correct.
Sudafed.
I mean, when I was a kid, maybe this is saying something about where I was raised, but if somebody did something bad, we were likely to moon them.
Okay.
But that was, how do you put it? You both walk away,
Or flip them the bird.
Or
right?
flip them the bird, right.
Yeah, which is not polite, but it's not going to kill them either.
I mean, we need a way to say, I'm frustrated. That's not lethal. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't land you in jail for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's basically our level of communication has become guns, and we need to start saying that there are other ways of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to be responsible in even our movie making in expressing that and balancing that and saying, we can solve things in a different way.
Yeah, I hear you. And also guns are, when you buy a gun in a gun shop or there's supposed to be a background check. A lot of times they're not even done. You could you could have killed your first wife. And these people are getting guns anyway. I don't know how they get that loophole. You know what I'm saying? They go to gun shows and where these people are like, oh, don't worry, here, have the gun, just give me the money. Who's monitoring them? You're there with that person selling you the gun. And you're there. Who's watching to make sure that you do make that background? Nobody's there. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then in California, where these two shootings occurred, they're surrounded by states where it's harder to get bubble gum than it is to get a gun. So they can bring them right over the state line and use them. So when people say, "Oh, California has strict gun laws, but look at all those murders," well, if you don't have laws throughout the country that are uniform, where every state follows the same laws, it's not going to make a difference, right?
And not only that, but guns don't really work well for self-defense. I mean, that sounds really weird to say that, but it takes a while to draw a gun. It takes at least a second or two. Uh-huh. And if you're close enough, for me, if you were close enough that a second or two, you're going to give me, I can punch you before you get that gun out.
Yeah. Home invasion, I could see, having it in your bed. What do they call it? Your what's that called on the
dresser?
Side, side dresser, whatever. Because if you're hearing a noise and you hear footsteps in your house, that's a good way to thwart them. But you don't need an AR-15. That's an aggressive weapon. That's an offensive weapon. That's if you're being invaded by 15 people, which doesn't usually happen in the United States. Have you ever had 15 people try to rob your house at one time? I mean,
I think that's probably the police if there's 15 people in front.
I mean, I'm just being. I'm trying to be logical. I mean, I could see if you have a handgun, it shoots. You have six bullets in the gun. Somebody comes in your house, you shoot them. fine, But you don't need an AR-15 with hundreds and hundreds of rounds of ammunition to thwart a robber from in your house. I don't
So
get it. But.
just imagine you left the window open and you don't know that, and you hear tick, 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 and something's coming into your bedroom, and you bring out the AR, whatever, and you shoot at it, and blood splatters all over the place, and you turn on the lights, and it's a squirrel.
That's an interesting story. That sounds like a Twilight Zone episode. But anyway, I love this question coming up. This is the question of the year.
Okay,
really. Are you ready for this?
Yes. Da 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 da.
Da 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 da. Okay, no, this show wouldn't be complete without discussing the mess that is George Santos, a.k.a. Anthony DeVolder, a.k.a. Kitara Ravache. I love that, Kitara Ravache. Among other names. How dangerous is it to have someone who has totally lied on their resume in Congress, and what can be done to prevent this from ever happening again? And I want to add something to that question. If he was making $50,000 like they claim he was on his taxes, and then the year he was running, all of a sudden he's making hundreds and thousands of dollars. Where is that money coming from?
Yes.
That's the scariest thing. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think this really points out the differences between the two parties, because here in Minnesota, I know for a fact that when anybody runs and we do a convention, that the people who go to the convention really check out the people. They interview people. They put a lot of effort into it. And we may not have found everything that George Santos said wrong or something, but we're pretty good at digging out a lot of information and knowing the background. So we really feel like we know our candidates, and it's our responsibility as being that first level of endorsement. So before you get a DFL endorsement, every person who's part of that convention feels duty-bound to do some research.
The height of hypocrisy, though, Kelly, is that Speaker McCarthy, you know who he is, I call him 15-vote McCarthy, he has the nerve, the unmitigated gall, to not want Adam Schiff or Ilhan Omar or some other person who I can't think of right now on committees because he thinks they're compromised. But this guy, who nobody knows where he's from, they don't even know his real name, it's okay to have him on a committee. Okay? Isn't that crazy to you?
Yes, the Republican Party has flown. I don't know how do you put it.
The coop.
Yep. There used to be a common set of values between everybody, and it doesn't feel like the Republicans are sharing some of those. At least not. I'm not saying so much for Republican voters, but the people who are actually getting elected. I think that this is the money in politics. That the money owns the Republican candidates more than their party does. And that's just the direction it's been going. And it's pretty obvious to me that their mission is not to make good government, but to make sure that government doesn't get in the way of anything that the big owners, the big money people want to do.
Yes. Money talks, and you know what walks, right? You heard that expression?
Oh, yeah.
BS walks, yeah. Another question.
Okay.
I think going forward, I'm going to make this like a thing now on the Downright Upright show. I am going to ask all my guests to give a prediction about who they think will be the Republican nominee and who will be the Democratic nominee in the 2024 general election. Let's start with what you think. And by the way, this is episode 20, so this is a monumental episode.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, and so I'm going to do this as a little shtick at the end of my show, so I can get everybody's opinion who they think is going to be the nominee for the Republicans and the nominee for the Democrats. So we'll start with you. What do you think?
So my prediction on the Democratic side, I mean, I realize Santos is looking
George Santos?
George Santos is looking like, pretty much a shoo-in. But
you mean DeSantis?
DeSantis, that's what I mean.
Maybe his real name is. Maybe his name is.
I don't do too much with Republicans because
that's his other name. Who knows? Yeah, go ahead.
They're the same people. Oh my God!
Well, they both did drag, so yeah. I think.
Anyway,
yeah.
My prediction is it's somebody who's not on our radar.
I said that myself. Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is because the early people get picked off. And I think there's somebody who's really been studying things and has a plan.
Yep.
And they're going to announce at just the right time and run a flash campaign. Mm-hmm. And by the time that in a year or so, the early contenders get all sullied. They get old, they get dusty, they're just no longer. Mm-hmm. And Republicans like flash. So they're going to look for the new flashy candidate, and we don't know who that is yet.
Mm-hmm. No, we don't. And, I kind of think myself, like you, that it's going to be somebody that's not even crossing our minds at this point. Because DeSantis seems like the obvious person, but he's got so many skeletons in his closet right now. I mean, he's not even allowing AP African American Studies to be taught in Florida. I mean, that to me is not only disgusting, it's flat out racist. I'm going to say it. I'm sorry if my listeners don't, I think he's a racist because if you let Italian studies, AP Italian studies be taught, AP Irish studies be taught, AP whatever studies, and then when it comes to African American studies, you have a big ass problem. I think you are a racist. I'm sorry. Hate me if you want to, but I call a spade a spade. I think that's what it is. What do you say?
I think so. And on the Democratic side.
Yeah, on the Democratic side.
I think we're going to have a wide open space. I don't think that, the current president, I think, will retire, but I don't think he's going to announce that until the last moment.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But that's a guess. I don't know.
Throw a name out, though.
No, I can't throw a name because I don't think it's somebody that's on our horizon yet.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Because I think we're going to bust it wide open. I think you're going to see stages with 11 candidates. And it's going to be the best persuader. And I think we're going to vote for a person who's not only the best persuader, but the best persuader of people who aren't Democrats, who are on the margins. And somebody who could go on Fox News and just rip them up.
That sounds like Pete Buttigieg.
Well, I think he's the category of people that we'll be looking at,
But unfortunately, though, great Kelly, I this is just me. I think Americans are they're not ready for LGBTQ plus people yet in that kind of an office. I mean, I hate to say it. I wish that wasn't so. Other countries have had LGBTQ plus people, like in Iceland, they had a prime minister that was gay. So, but I don't know. Americans, I don't know. We're always like 10 steps behind.
I don't believe that. I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
Those people who are anti, they're also called Republicans, And so I think it's wide open.
Okay.
But I think that there's a lot of governor candidates. There's a lot of senator candidates that don't make the news, Mm-hmm. Like who had heard of Hakeem until recently? Mm-hmm. But apparently he's an extraordinary person at building coalitions.
Yes.
I mean, he could be one of the names.
And he's a fellow New Yorker.
Yes. So what I'm saying is we have a great depth of really great people. We don't know who they are yet as an average, person just sitting back here.
Right.
But give them a chance, and it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. You and I are going to agree on that. Interesting is not the word. I'm going to throw a name out. This is just my idea. Ponder it for a while. Governor Gavin Newsom of California, the man that they tried to recall him, and he survived a recall and 2 more elections. So the man he's got something. He's got that je ne sais quoi that I think people are looking for. He's a bulldog. And Democrats have never really had a bulldog. You know, the Republicans have had Trump. They've had Bush. You know, they've had these very aggressive kind of candidates. Whereas the Democrats, we always have the nice guy like Obama and Clinton and Jimmy Carter. But watch out for Gavin Newsom. He'll bite your head right off.
Well, I can't wait. I can't
well,
wait.
That's just my opinion, but, you know, I could be wrong. Anyway, before we end the show, Kelly, is there anything, any political story or issue that I haven't mentioned that you would like to talk about briefly as the clock ticks?
Well, one of the things I guess I would want to say to everyone is everything looks impossible until we do it. I mean, LGBTQ. Remember when we were facing that constitutional amendment and we didn't think that there was a hope, and we all got together and we strategized, and we won. Mm-hmm. Everything looks impossible when you're coming from this direction.
I love that. That's true.
You know, so to me, what I would say is, figure out what you can do as a person, what your contribution is. 2 hours on a Saturday, in my case, my whole life. But, figure out what contribution, and have hope and have belief and get together and think about it. We can win. The only way we've ever won is by a small group of people getting together and then energizing everybody to keep going.
Yes.
It always looks impossible from this side of things, and from the other side when it's done, well, of course we could do that. So we can do things.
And that's why I love Minnesota. I really do, and I'm not blowing smoke in your face. I'm a New Yorker by birth, but a Minnesotan in the heart, and I'll tell you why. Before the Supreme Court passed marriage equality, Minnesota passed it before they did. That shows you something. That shows you that this state has love, compassion, and understanding for difference. I love that whole thing. And other states don't have what we have. We have that je ne sais quoi. I love that word, je ne sais quoi. It's something that you can't put your finger on. It's just something that we as Minnesotans are proud of, that we have, that no other state could say,
And now we've come full circle again to bragging about our own state.
I love it. I know. We love our state, right? Tell the truth.
We love our state.
We love Minnesota. Anyway, we have come to the end of the show, unfortunately. And will you ever like to come back again? And we'll do I want to do like a forum show where I sit with a few people and talk, shoot the breeze about different topics. Would you be into that?
Oh, sure. I have other topics. Yeah. Yes, sure. I'd be glad to.
And I really enjoyed having you. It was wonderful. You're a fantastic person. And for more information about Grace Kelly, you can go to practicalcampaigns.com and or follow her on Facebook at Grace Kelly. So thank you so much, Kelly, for spending time with us on the Downright Upright Show. And to our listeners, thank you for spending time with us today. And please stay tuned for more of the Downright Upright Show in the future. And this is your host, Philip Anthony, saying ciao for now. Ciao, Kelly.